stop for a moment. Not because something is wrong, but because something is finally aligning. You didn't arrive here by chance. You didn't click accidentally. And you're not hearing this at a random time in your life. This moment has weight. There's a reason your attention slowed down just now. A reason your mind paused instead of scrolling forward. Something inside you recognized this before logic caught up. And that recognition matters. Because lately you've felt it, that quiet sense that things are shifting beneath the surface. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Old ways of thinking don't hold the same power anymore. Things that once pulled at you now feel distant. Conversations that used to drain you no longer land the same way. That isn't numbness, that's discernment. You're beginning to see clearly where you've been operating on autopilot, where you followed paths that felt expected rather than aligned, where you held on to things out of habit instead of truth. And now, correction isn't coming later, it's happening now. That can feel unsettling, because awareness removes comfort before it brings clarity. It asks you to notice what no longer fits, even if you're not sure yet what replaces it. But here's what matters. You didn't miss this moment. The timing is precise. Everything you've walked through, the waiting, the confusion, the unanswered questions, the seasons where progress felt slower for you than for others, none of that was wasted. It trained you to recognize substance over noise. That's why you're here. You're not being warned. You're being invited. Invited to step out of reaction and into intention. Invited to stop postponing alignment just because it feels unfamiliar. Invited to trust what you already sense instead of doubting it until proof appears. Because proof follows movement, not the other way around. You may notice resistance rising as you listen, a part of you wanting certainty before commitment, wanting reassurance before action. That's normal. But understand this, waiting now costs more than moving carefully. Some doors don't close loudly, they close quietly through hesitation, and others open the same way. You don't force them, you notice them. That's what's being asked of you here, to stay present, to stay aware, to recognize that this phase of your life isn't about gathering more information, it's about applying what you already know. You've learned enough, you've endured enough, you've reflected enough. Now alignment requires response. Not a dramatic leap, not a public declaration, just an honest internal yes. Yes to clarity over comfort. Yes to movement over delay. Yes to choosing what fits, even if it means releasing what once felt safe. That's how shifts begin, quietly, internally, decisively. And once that decision is made, things don't fall apart, they reorganize. Conversations change, timing adjusts, opportunities surface where resistance used to be. Not because you forced anything, but because you stopped resisting yourself. This moment isn't here to scare you, it's here to steady you, to remind you that you're not behind, you're not late, and you're not missing anything meant for you. You're simply being asked to move with awareness now, instead of waiting for the pressure to do it for you. Stay with that, because what comes next won't require you to abandon who you are. It will meet you where you stand, clear, grounded, and ready. Stay with me for a moment longer, because what's happening now isn't loud enough to interrupt you. It's quiet enough to require your attention. This is usually the part people misunderstand. They think alignment feels like excitement, like certainty, like confidence arriving fully formed. But real alignment feels different. It feels like relief mixed with responsibility, like something settling in your chest while your mind catches up slowly, like realizing you can't go back to how things were, Not because you're afraid, but because you've outgrown it. That's where you are right now. You may notice you're less interested in convincing people, less willing to explain yourself, less patient with things that don't move you forward. That isn't arrogance. That's clarity removing excess. When growth begins to stabilize, your nervous system changes before your circumstances do. You stop reacting immediately. You pause more often. You choose carefully instead of urgently. And suddenly, life responds differently. Situations that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable. Not because they got smaller, but because you got steadier. You begin to notice patterns, how certain doors closed exactly when they needed to, how some relationships faded without conflict, just distance, how delays redirected you instead of denying you. At the time, it felt like loss. Now it feels like protection. This phase isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to what was already aligned before noise, expectation, and survival blurred it. You're learning to trust your internal signals again. That subtle tightening when something isn't right. That ease when something fits without explanation. That quiet confidence that doesn't need approval. Those signals were always there. You're just listening now. And listening changes outcomes. Because when you stop forcing timelines, things move faster. When you stop chasing certainty, clarity arrives naturally. When you stop negotiating with misalignment, space opens for what belongs. This is why patience feels different now. It's not passive, it's intentional. You're no longer waiting because you're unsure. You're waiting because you're selective. And that selectiveness is powerful. It protects your energy. It sharpens your decisions. It prevents you from settling just to escape discomfort. Here's what's important to understand. Nothing meaningful is being taken from you in this phase. What's leaving was already finished. What's approaching won't rush you. It will recognize you. That's how alignment works. You don't have to chase it. You meet it. And when you do, things begin to fit with less effort than before. You'll notice it in small ways first. A conversation that lands differently. A decision that feels clearer instead of conflicted. A sense of calm where anxiety used to live. Those aren't coincidences. They're confirmations. You're moving in the right direction without forcing the pace. Stay here mentally, because the next part of this shift is about learning when not to move, and when stillness is the action that changes everything. Now let this settle, because this is the point where everything becomes simple. Not easy, but clear. You don't need another sign. You don't need reassurance. You don't need to keep questioning whether this shift is real. You already know. The moment you stopped rushing, life adjusted. The moment you stopped forcing, things began to align. The moment you trusted yourself again, stability returned. That wasn't luck. That was self-trust restoring order. Here's the truth most people never reach. Peace is not the absence of challenge. It's the presence of clarity. And clarity changes how you move. You no longer chase outcomes. You position yourself. You no longer react emotionally. You respond intentionally. You no longer confuse intensity with purpose. You recognize alignment by how calm it feels. This is why the future no longer feels heavy. You've stopped carrying what was never yours to hold. You've released expectations that didn't belong to your path. You've learned that strength doesn't need noise to exist. From here forward, life won't ask you to abandon yourself to grow. What's coming will meet you where you are, steady, aware, and grounded. There will still be choices, there will still be moments that test patience, but they won't shake you, because you're no longer trying to become someone. You're simply living in alignment with who you already are. That's the shift. Quiet, undeniable, permanent. You didn't miss anything. You weren't late.
You weren't behind. You were preparing, even when it didn't look like progress. And now, what unfolds next won't require effort to hold together. It will flow because it fits. Stay with that knowing. Nothing needs to be forced anymore.